The Boss's Claim. An Age Gap Romance Audiobook. Michelle Love. Chapter 1. Evan.
Well, Jones, if it goes through, we could be very rich men. Are you ready for that? Evan grinned, as his junior partner said the usual cautious thing. The man was brilliant. Evan had chosen him specifically for his intelligence and vision, but he lacked self-assurance. Someday, Evan was sure he would help Jones attain the confidence that men in their business couldn't do without. Well, ready or not, my friend, it's coming. So get ready. Get the details for that dinner planned. We're taking the right step. I know it, you know it. And sooner or later, the board is going to come around. By the time Evan hung up 10 minutes later, Jones had appeared to be at least somewhat more certain. Evan shook his head. He was a man who loved his work almost as much as he loved the luxuries it gave him, but sometimes it was like pulling teeth. He dropped a few bills on the table, more than enough to cover lunch and the tip, and walked out into the mild London afternoon. Spring never seemed to last very long in London, he mused. Soon enough, it would be sweltering summer, and he would want to drive or be driven everywhere he went. For now, though, spring was gorgeous, and the weather so mild that a walk back to his quiet London office seemed like a good idea. At least it did before a cyclist veered up over the curb, just long enough to snag Evan's arm on a metal handlebar spur. Evan swore. The cyclist yelped, and Evan was dragged forward by a yard before he finally managed to pull away. He looked down at his sleeve, ignoring the bruise likely forming from the impact in favor of a sartorial once-over. As Evan stood there muttering under his breath, the inept cyclist hurried away, leaving Evan cursing a blue streak. Evan was a man who liked to dress well, and even if he wasn't going to be seeing any investors today, he was dressed in a slate blue suit that was rather a favorite. At least it had been, until that bicycle snagged the sleeve and tore a short jagged slash in the arm. Evan hesitated for a moment. He was tempted to simply toss the suit or donate it. But he hated the idea of giving up an otherwise perfectly good suit. Savile Row wasn't far away from where he was, just slightly past his own office. The bustling street was lined with the finest tailors in the Western world, and he made his way to a discreet shop set back from the thoroughfare, the only indication of its presence at all a handsome brass sign on the door. He had been coming to Monterey's for suits since he was in his 20s, and he had the utmost faith in their service. Evan climbed up the narrow staircase, and an old-fashioned bell chimed above his head when he let himself in. Instead of seeing the gray-haired older man who had handled his suits for ages, behind the desk stood a lovely young woman. She couldn't have been a day out of her early 20s, with a thick head of ash-blonde hair and a curvy figure dressed in an old-fashioned cotton blouse and a neat tweed skirt. In spite of her obvious youth, she wore hose and clunky dark shoes. She also had her nose firmly buried in a fashion magazine as Evan walked in. She was so distracted with the magazine that Evan had to clear his throat before she looked up in shock. "Oh my goodness." She hurried over to greet him, her sweet heart-shaped face furrowed with worry. "I'm so sorry, sir, but I didn't hear the shop bell ring. Welcome to Monterey's. My name is Anna. How can I help you?" When she looked up at him with a shy smile, Evan was enchanted to see that her eyes were a deep amber, something he was certain he had never seen before. "Good afternoon. Can you tell me where Edmund might be?" "Oh, Mr. Monterey is seeing to wool shipments from Iceland today, and he won't be in until late. May I ask you what you need?" He pondered the situation momentarily, before extending his arm, displaying the ragged sleeve. It was unlikely that the secretary would be interested, but perhaps she would convey his haste to her employer if she saw the damage. I require this fixed sooner rather than later." Anna examined the tear on his sleeve with the calm gravity that a surgeon would bestow on his patient. "That is a rather bad tear, sir," she said thoughtfully. "May I ask how you came by it?" "Street brawl." She looked up at him, as if unsure whether to take him seriously, and Evan laughed at the disbelief in her lovely eyes. A cyclist snagged it. Her smile left him slightly breathless. I was going to guess that it was something like that. A snag and then a drag. That makes for an awkward repair, though. She drew her full lip between her teeth and worried it. It really does. Evan raised his eyebrow at her curiously. You sound very sure of that. I might be new here, sir, but I'm hardly new to the craft. Evan blinked at her, noticing the wide pockets of her skirts for the first time, and the stub of measuring tape that peeked out like an insolent tongue. Anna did seem a little dowdy to be a secretary, even for a business as conservative as Monterey's. In that case, no, he thought in surprise. It couldn't be. Monterey was far too old-fashioned too. So Edmund has started doing trade in women's dresses as well? Evan asked. And you are a seamstress? Anna drew herself up to her full height, which couldn't have been more than 5'5", if that. The look she gave him was defiant and more than a little proud, and he found himself becoming even more intrigued with the girl. As a matter of fact, sir, a woman who makes custom dresses of a high quality is called a dressmaker rather than a seamstress. I am not a dressmaker. I am a tailor. Her voice dared him to make something out of it, and Evan swallowed a smile. For some reason, he had no interest in puncturing her pride, as much as he enjoyed doing it to pompous idiots in his business sector. All right then, Anna. He gestured at the tear in his sleeve, and she looked at it again. What would you propose to do with this? Would you simply get rid of the whole suit? No, I wouldn't, Anna replied. I would fix it by hand. I could have it done for you in less than half an hour. But? That sounds splendid, Evan said warmly, more than pleased at her efficiency. If you take a look, you'll see that I have an account here. It should be no problem to bill it. She looked worried. Well, sir, that might be a little difficult. You know Mr. Monterey, and he is very particular. I have a feeling that you might be one of our top-tier clients, and that means that under no circumstances am I to undertake any repairs for you without his direct and immediate supervision. I see. Well, I have decided that that doesn't matter. Sir. Evan rested one large hand slightly on her small, slender shoulder. If you think that I am a top-tier client, you must know that I am someone who is used to getting my way, yes. I want you to fix this up for me. No excuses now.
Chapter 2. Anna.
She should have known that the man was trouble the moment he startled her. If it had been anyone else, she would have been completely fine, but something about seeing this man in the doorway made her mouth go dry. He had to be in his 40s, at least 15 years older than her own 22 years of age. He was dark-haired with just a touch of silver at his temples, and unlike so many of the men she knew, he was in amazing shape. He wore his American suit like a knight dressed for battle, and there was something in his bright green eyes that gave her butterflies in her stomach. When he set his hand on her shoulders, tingles ran through her entire body, and his smile that made her own lips curve reflexively upwards in response. Of course, just because the client was ridiculously attractive, didn't mean that she should be doing what she was doing. Though she'd couched her words both for the sake of the client and her own employment, Mr. Monterey was far more than just particular. He was a tyrant with an iron fist that lorded over his own small kingdom with the eye of an eagle and a heart of flint. His exacting standards made him a veritable legend on a street of legendary tailors, but also made him a terrifying boss. She should have said no. Truly, Anna should have looked away from the man's mesmerizing green eyes and told him firmly that there was a code of business here that she had to adhere to. But instead, she found herself somehow escorting him to a comfortable brocade armchair in the visitor's alcove and pouring him a glass of wine to enjoy as he waited. When she asked for his jacket, he gave her a bemused smile that certainly seemed more flirtatious than it should have been. Usually, I'm not the one who was being asked to strip. It was mild as such things went, but Anna found that she couldn't stop herself from blushing. The worst part was that she thought he knew she was blushing too. Anna felt far too aware that the client, a Mr. Evan Sheffield apparently, from the card he presented, could see exactly what she was doing from his alcove. She expected him to pull out a phone or to pick up one of the books from the shelves that lined the alcove, but instead, he sat there in his shirt sleeves, sipped his wine, and watched her with a fascinated expression. It's nothing you haven't dealt with before, and if he stays quiet and doesn't scream at you, he's already going to be far better than Mr. Monterey, isn't he? Just do the job, girl. She draped the jacket over the dummy, pulling up one of the tall chairs so she could work on it without straining herself. The tear was bad, but hardly as bad as it could have been, and she realized she recognized the cloth. Is this one of ours? Anna barely knew she had spoken out loud before she got an answer. It is, Evan confirmed, his voice a comfortable drawl. I get all of my suits here. Ah, I see. She was just putting in the first few stitches when the hairs on the back of her neck prickled, and she spun the chair around. Instead of remaining seated in his alcove and enjoying his drink, Evan Sheffield was suddenly behind her, watching her as she worked. Anna's cheeks went red. Sir. What? She stuttered. Believe me when I say I will give all my attention to your suit. You do not need to worry that I am going to ruin it. I know what I am doing. But I don't, he said with a surprisingly boyish smile. I only wanted to see. Anna told herself that he was a top-tier client. Telling him where to go and what to do was even more likely to get her fired than breaking the particular rule about attending to top clients solely with her boss present. So instead, she mumbled something about it being fine and returned to her work. When he next spoke, his voice was soft, almost conciliatory. You must have worked very hard to get here. All my life, she said absently, her eyes focused on the fine fabric while her fingers moved over it swiftly, the rhythms of the needle as familiar as breathing. I've always loved men's suits. The hang, the drape, the endless amount of creativity wrapped in what most would consider to be one of the most conservative packages in the world. A good suit is a work of art, Mr. Sheffield. Call me Evan. A peculiar shiver ran down her spine, and somehow she knew that he was aware of it. He wasn't asking her to call him by his first name. It was an order, and she nodded almost unconsciously. Yes, Evan. She returned her attention to the torn fabric beneath her fingertips. Within a matter of minutes, Anna nodded, pleased that her initial assessment from afar had been mistaken. Up close, she could see that the tear was not as severe as she'd worried. This will be an easy fix. The repair should be almost invisible. Evan smiled widely, making her feel as though she'd said something about repairing a bodily limb, rather than a sleeve. I'm glad you could fix it. It is one of my favorites. I would love to see you in something Italian, though. Anna nearly dropped her needle when those words popped out of her mouth. What is wrong with you? For half a moment, she wondered if she had been lucky enough that Evan had somehow missed it, but then he chuckled. Italian, eh? And why is that? Well, you're wearing an American suit right now, Anna mumbled, seeing no way out of the conversation she'd unintentionally initiated. It's bigger, boxier, even if it is well fit to you. I suppose that if I had my way, you would be dressed in Italian because it's slimmer, sleeker. You have an excellent frame for Italian, lean and long, and of course, you have the looks for it. If she hadn't been finishing off the seam, Anna was certain she would have fallen over at her own words. Gosh, what was wrong with her? She had gotten so very far in the tailoring world by keeping her head down and her mouth shut, and now she looked like she was going to get fired over speaking to a client as if she were his dear friend. Instead of being offended, however, Evan seemed delighted. That sounds interesting. I can't say that I've ever thought much about the kind of suits I've worn. All I know is that Edmund makes the ones that make me look the best. I've come to have some fairly high expectations. He was silent for a long, pensive moment before adding, and now you're telling me that I could do better. Anna was determined to keep a resolute silence. Saying anything further was only likely to stir up trouble. Then to her surprise, Evan came to stand by her side, and he touched the tip of her sharp chin with his finger, making her look up. The gesture should have been far too intimate from a stranger, but somehow, coming from this man, There was something simply right about it. Almost dreamily, she met his eyes and he smiled, showing off white and even teeth. "Tell me what you think I should be wearing." "Italian," she said without hesitation. "You look powerful and imposing in this suit today. It also made you look heavy and land-bound. In Italian suits, you would be like a knife cutting through the world." His sharp eyes narrowed. "I have to admit, I don't mind the sound of that." "And no black," Anna went on, unable to stop herself as she imagined the privilege of dressing such a handsome man. "It's too severe for you. But navy, yes, and a pale morning gray, possibly with a pearl blue shirt." She was so concentrated on the idea of dressing Evan, of looking into his deep, forest green eyes, that for the second time in the day, she missed the bell above the door ringing. But she didn't miss the shout of rage, as it came up almost behind her. "What in the name of God are you doing?"
Chapter 3. Evan.
Edmond Monterey was a tall and powerfully built man, and he filled his space like a steam locomotive. He came thumping into the room with eyes full of fury, and for a moment, Evan wanted to step in front of Anna to protect her. He began to step forward, but Monterey stopped short and scowled at the woman. The look on Anna's face was equal parts dismay and fear, Evan noted, and he hated both expressions, missing her confidence that had been there only moments earlier when she'd been discussing options for his clothing. The woman knew her business, no two ways around it. It was a quality Evan found exceedingly appealing, so to see it vanish so abruptly galled him. "I asked you a question," Monterey snapped, his face reddening. "What do you think you are doing?" "This gentleman came in," Anna said quietly, clearly accustomed to being berated. The thought of that sat very poorly with Evan. "He asked me to fix this sleeve." "Sir, I tried to tell him that it was shop policy to wait for you, but he insisted." "And if he insisted you should burn down the building, would you have done that as well?" Monterey seethed. "All he asked you to do, after all, was to take my grandfather's shop's reputation in your two hands and cast it into the garbage." "She's right," Evan cut in. He knew that this was a matter between an employee and an employer. By all rights, he should stay out of it, but he had never been all that good about staying out of things when there was an injustice being done. "I'm the one who told her to fix my damned jacket." "And of course, your jacket will be fixed, Mr. Sheffield." Monterey turned obsequious, which only further irritated Evan. "This is more a matter of an impertinent employee. My taking her on was too big a risk, I'm afraid, simply so she could attain some kind of ridiculous dream." A glance at Anna made Evan's blood boil. She sat with her head lowered, eyes cast down, looking so damn small and repentant, and for what? For wanting to help him at his own insistence. Evan had never been a man who tolerated fools or bullies, and as he was beginning to realize, Edmond Monterey was both. "Clearly, you were a chance that I should never have taken," Monterey turned back to Anna. "And when you leave here today for the last time, you can be sure that no one on Savile Row will be as foolish as I was." "Please, sir, just give me another chance," Anna said in a low voice, lifting her head, her hands clenching and unclenching. Her eyes were beseeching, an expression that cut through Evan painfully. "I was only doing what I thought best." "What you thought best?" Edmund sneered, and it sounded as if he was ready to fly into another tirade when Evan cut him off. "That is enough." The words were uttered calmly, but they didn't need violence or volume to cut through Edmund's vitriol. When the master tailor turned back to him, he was contrite, likely having realized he'd stepped over the line in front of the wrong person. Bullies were good at judging such things. "I am so sorry, sir, that this had to happen in front of you." He all but wagged a tail, and looked at Evan in hopes of forgiveness. "You can be assured." "When I said that was enough," Evan said coldly, "I meant it." Finally, Edmund shut up, and Evan took a deep breath to calm himself. The last thing that anyone needed right now was his flying off the handle, as much as he was tempted to do just that. "This young lady helped me while you were unavailable. She understood your damned rules, but I insisted. I can see now that I did not put her in the best situation, and that's unfortunate, But I also did not expect you to be such an unreasonable son of a gun. Monterey stared at him, unaccustomed to ever being addressed in such a manner. Sir, you do not understand. Savile Row has traditions and a story of service to the quality that goes back. I don't care, Evan interrupted. Not about you, not about Savile Row, and not about your shop. What I care about is Anna, and about how very shabbily you have treated her. Anna, how much do you make here? Anna dropped her gaze again, and named her salary. Not surprised, Evan glanced back at Edmund in disgust. You were cheating her. How did I fail to see the truth behind your fine fabrics? He shook his head, and directed his next statement at Anna. Come work for me, and I'll double that. If we still suit one another in 6 months' time, I will triple it. Anna stared at him, her honey-colored eyes wide. Work for you doing what? Being my personal dresser, shopper, tailor, whatever. It might not be your dream of working on Savile Row, but by God, at least it will pay you a living wage. For a moment, he didn't think she was going to do it. He thought that her chains might have been too strong, and that she would stay here at Monterey's begging a bona fide idiot for a second chance. Then her pretty face took on a look of determination, and she nodded sharply. Mr. Sheffield, thank you. I accept. Mr. Monterey, perhaps you were gearing up to fire me, or perhaps you only wanted to use me as a scratching post for a while before you continued claiming my designs as your own. Either way, I am tendering my resignation, effective immediately. It was startlingly satisfying watching Monterey's jaw drop. The man went pale, and then red, and then he started shouting. You can't do this. I'll make sure that you never work in any shop again. You cannot throw away everything you had here. Go get your things. Evan kept himself between Anna and the unhinged man. Everything. If he tries to keep back anything that's yours, I'll send my corporate lawyers after him. It'd be appropriate, given that you are now my employee. When Monterey started to speak again, Evan cut him off with a sharp hand gesture. No. I have had enough of listening to you. Anna disappeared momentarily, and reappeared again quickly, carrying a small suitcase and her jacket draped over her arm. Evan smiled inwardly, as she ignored Monterey entirely and looked at him. Shall we go, Mr. Sheffield? Of course. She maintained her poise as they walked out the door, and made it about halfway down the block before she started shaking. She looked so overwrought that Evan put his arm around her shoulders, and she curled up to his body with a nearly innocent trust that he found touching. What in the world have I done? She asked wildly, and Evan laughed. The right thing, I promise you. There was a small curry shop nearby, and once she had had a few bites of fiery vindaloo in her and a few sips of water, she looked better. I still can't believe you did that, she murmured, giving him a look that was almost shy. I've never heard anyone talk to Edmund Monterey like that. Believe it, Evan said with a shrug. He's a petty bully, and he's gone now. You needn't ever worry about him again. Anna's gaze turned wry. Now, I just have to worry about you. Evan grinned at the girl who was watching him with a certain amount of wariness, but underneath it, he wondered if he could sense a fascination as well. What's to worry about? He inquired. I've been told that I dress too conservatively, and sometimes I like to make an impression. I liked what you were saying in there. You have free rein and a decent budget to dress me, and you'll be paid well for your work. Well, I suppose we should talk about your taste then, Anna began. Like I said before, Italian would be a stunning choice on you. Evan waved away her questions. I trust you. I don't need to be bothered with the details if I leave it all in your hands, do I? She looked startled. I suppose not. Good. Clothing only appeals to me insofar as how it looks on me once purchased and how others react to it. I'm far more interested in talking about you. Me? Anna's voice came out a startled squeak, and he laughed. Relax, sweetheart. I'm not going to bite unless you ask very nicely. He smiled inwardly at the blush that colored her cheeks. Well, you're from my side of the pond, aren't you? Oh, yes, I'm American. From Chicago originally, and then LA. As she talked, Evan listened, and soon the picture of Anna became clear. She was sweet, bright, young, and aching for a chance at her dreams. He understood, and he felt a touch of genuine affection for the girl. Underneath the affection was the whisper of something deeper, something inside him that he hadn't been aware of before, but he pushed it aside. He was too old for that kind of thing, but as he watched Anna's elegant hands move as she talked, as he saw the spark of warmth in her beautiful eyes, he reminded himself that there were certainly plenty of other things that he wasn't too old for.
Chapter 4. Anna.
Anna could barely believe that things were happening so fast. 2 weeks ago, she had been toiling night and day for the barest glimmer of her dream in London. Now she was in Manhattan, waiting for the real test run of her new job. Evan had gotten her in touch with human resources to finalize her hire, had given her a company credit card to start refurbishing his wardrobe, and that had been that. Well, mostly that. Throughout those 2 weeks, Mr. Sheffield had slowly been ratcheting up the physical tension between them. There was no denying how much she wanted him, nor did she miss the way his gaze lingered longer each time they saw one another. In between those meetings there were the texts, going initially from businesslike to slowly more and more flirtatious, and then the gifts. One day there would be a beautiful rose. Another, a tube of the exact right shade of rich, luxurious lipstick. Still another, a gift card for a massage. Each day, the message was more and more clear. And it was crazy. But as fast as it was all happening, Anna couldn't find it in herself to ask him to slow things. On the rare occasion that she did see him, Anna was disturbingly aware of his presence. She had thought him an extremely handsome man when he first walked into Monterey's, but there was more to it than that. She had dressed many handsome men, but Evan Sheffield was more than handsome. There was something about his smile, his charm, that made her breath catch. Tuesday afternoon, he walked into the penthouse suite where she was waiting for him, where he'd set her up to live and work for the next 6 months at least. She had dressed for the occasion, a tailor dressing him for a late afternoon event, in sleek black slacks, heels, and a demure blouse with a collar that tied with a bow at the throat. Her employer, on the other hand, appeared in jeans and a white long-sleeved shirt, casual and with the smell of sunlight in his dark hair. He gave her a slight grin as he entered the room, one that visibly melted Anna on the spot. "I look that bad, huh?" "Oh no, Mr. Sheffield, not at all." He didn't. She couldn't stop herself from glancing at the smooth play of muscles over his forearms, how dark the skin was compared to the crisp white of his shirt. "You're not a very good liar, darling. And don't call me Mr. Sheffield. If you're going to be getting me down to my drawers, you might as well call me Evan." Evan, Anna mused, and she was only aware that she had said it out loud when her employer chuckled. "Well, if you say it like that, I might never make it to tonight's benefit at all." She blushed when she realized what he meant, and he crossed the room to her. In the back part of her mind, she thought that she should be a little more alarmed by being in such close proximity with this man, but instead all she could feel was a flutter of excitement. "You should push me away if you don't like the things I say," he murmured. She couldn't take her eyes off of his lips. "I like the things you say just fine," Anna replied, and he grinned, this time sharp and nearly feral. "You're wearing the lipstick. Allow me one moment." That was all the warning she had before his mouth found hers, his hand gently resting at the back of her neck as if he couldn't let her go. The first touch of his lips sent a spark racing through her, and Anna realized she had never felt such a rush from a simple kiss before. Without thinking, she leaned into him, wanting to hold on to the connection as long as possible. Evan's kiss deepened, warm and certain, and Anna's hands found their way to his shoulders, steadying herself. There was a quiet intensity in the way he kissed her, as though every second mattered. Something in her seemed to melt, and for a moment all her usual caution slipped away. Her thoughts tangled. He was her boss, and she knew getting closer could change everything. But before she could overthink it, Evan stepped back with a sigh, leaving her knees weak. "You are impossibly tempting," he murmured, his gaze lingering on her as if reluctant to leave. "If I had any sense at all, I'd skip that benefit and stay here with you." But there are board members I need to speak with. I might own the company, but I still need their approval before I move forward. Believe me, Anna, we'll continue this conversation the first chance we get. She blushed to the roots of her hair at his insinuating tone. Anna had the idea that she should be running for the hills, but instead, all she could do was feel impatient at the fact he had to leave at all. Now, I believe you had some clothes for me. He switched into business mode effortlessly, yet another thing that fascinated her about him. Oh, yes, of course. She turned to the closet, where she had carefully hung the outfit she had picked out for him. Evan raised an eyebrow when he saw the blues. His preferred colors tended to be far darker. I chose blue because it's not too severe for daytime wear, Anna explained, and the fabric is the newest thing coming out of France at the moment. You see, there's silk shot through with nylon, giving it a bit of gleam, a bit of durability, while retaining the classic hang. I see. He nodded after a moment, leaving Anna weak-kneed again, this time because he was trusting her with his appearance, something no businessman did lightly. And the shirt? Well, turquoise is very in right now without being too far out as to seem trendy. The turquoise complements the blue of the suit, and the silver cufflinks add just a touch of kohl to the outfit and gives it distinction. Evan studied the outfit she had presented, and then smiled. All right. You know what you are doing. She smiled with relief, feeling a tension within her that she hadn't been aware of. Relax. Well, shoes are here and… Aren't you going to dress me? He interrupted. She blinked at him, and the grin on his face was frankly challenging. Sir? Gosh, I shouldn't like it when you call me that, Evan groaned, but I do. You can leave if you want, of course. But I thought you might like to stay and see what your work has come out to. Anna felt her stomach do a slow turn, and suddenly what she felt was not a pride in her work, but a kind of hunger. It wasn't to see silk and cotton draped perfectly off of the wearer, but instead she wanted to see Evan, bare, and to run her hands all over his frame. Yes, she said in a voice that hardly seemed like hers. I would like that. She followed him into the bedroom, where he stripped off his casual clothes with a kind of easy grace that made her blush. Anna hovered near the door, barely able to keep her hands to herself as his jacket, tie, and shirt hit the floor, followed by his slacks. Underneath it all, Evan's body was lean and strong, and she couldn't keep her eyes off of the light trail of hair that ran from his chest down into the waistband of his boxers. Matter-of-factly, he pulled on the trousers she had picked out, but then he turned to her after shrugging on the turquoise shirt. Show me how this is meant to fit. There was something wonderfully imperious about his words that drew Anna in immediately. She crossed the room towards him, and when she smoothed the fabric over his shoulders and around behind his neck, she felt an electric thrill run down her spine. There was something sensuous about touching his body, with only a thin layer of cloth between them. She started to button the shirt, remarking absently in her mind on the way the fabric stretched beautifully over his wide shoulders. As she carefully slid each button into its place, her fingers brushed against his skin. She concentrated on her task, not looking up even when she heard his breathing speed up a little. Almost startled at her own boldness, she tucked the shirt into his trousers before doing up the fly and then the belt. You're good at that, he noted, and she blushed. Well, you know. Dummies and dress forms. I was teasing you. He ran a gentle finger down the curve of her cheek as she fastened the gleaming cufflinks. For one fleeting moment, she imagined turning her head to press a soft kiss to his hand, holding it there just a little longer than necessary. She had a job to do though, and it was turning into a matter of pride that she do it well. Anna shook herself and pulled away, reaching for the jacket that had been what she considered to be the star of the ensemble. As she held it up for Evan to thread his arms through it, his phone rang. She stepped back, intending to leave the room, but he gestured for her to continue. Jones, I thought it might be you. No, the bid is solid. Make sure that MacArthur understands that. 12 million is what we're willing to commit for that parcel of land, and we are not going to go higher. Anna gasped as, with his phone in one hand, Evan reached out and rested his hand lightly against her side. There was nothing hurried about it, only a quiet certainty in the way he held her attention, even while speaking into the phone. His gaze was steady, as if he could focus on two things at once, the conversation in his ear and the woman in front of him. She buttoned his jacket with unsteady fingers, but didn't move away. Something about the moment, the nearness, the way his presence seemed to fill the space, made her feel claimed in a way she couldn't explain. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure we can. The Hillanger Group probably can't muster the fees, and even if they could, they may think we'll outbid them. But yes, make sure that goes through. I'm counting on you. He ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket. A small knowing smile touched his lips as he stepped closer, gently guiding her back toward the door. I've been wanting to do this, he said softly. That lipstick held up beautifully the first time. Let's see how it does now. He leaned in, capturing her lips in a kiss that carried an undercurrent of unspoken intensity. It contrasted with the elegance she radiated, making him seem all the more composed and in control. Anna let herself sink into the moment, the rest of the world fading, leaning closer in silent hope it would last. Too soon, far too soon, he drew back, his hand lingering gently against her cheek, his eyes warm with something like regret. I think you deserve more than a hurried moment, he murmured. Anna opened her mouth to respond, the words caught in her throat. I don't. This can wait, and it'll make this damn benefit I have to attend a little more entertaining, to know I have something good waiting for me afterward. Something good? Anna echoed, staring wide-eyed at him. You, he said, and the hungry look he gave her left absolutely no room for confusion about what he meant. Evan pulled out his wallet and handed her a black credit card. Anna blinked. I'm taking you out tonight. I want you to get yourself something to wear. Dress yourself like you would dress a client, from the skin out. But don't argue with me. I want to be seen with the best, and that means you use your best judgment. Do you understand? Yes. Anna's single soft exhalation made Evan smile, and he kissed her again. It was lighter, but full of promise. Enjoy yourself today, Anna. I'll see you tonight.
Chapter 5. Evan.
Evan felt a sense of rising anticipation as he rode the elevator up to his Manhattan penthouse. He had received confirmation from Anna during the benefit that she was doing as he asked, and that only made waiting to return home to her even more difficult. He wasn't sure when he had enjoyed spending time with a woman more. He remembered the plain little outfit she had worn that morning, and even in that he had been eager to touch her, to kiss her. Seeing the bold red lipstick on her soft, lush lips had driven him nearly wild. The idea of her being dressed even more provocatively awakened an even deeper hunger within him. He opened the door and found the penthouse lit with a soft light for evening. He didn't see her at first, entering the living room and closing the door behind him. Anna. Oh, you're back. She appeared in the doorway, and Evan felt his breath catch. Too much? She asked nervously, and he shook his head. No, I would say that that's just enough. He had received plenty of compliments on his own suit that afternoon, but he knew that if he had had Anna by his side, no one would have noticed him at all. Anna was dressed in a long, dark blue dress, adorned with a delicate shimmer of crystal beads. A slit that traveled up to her knee revealed a tantalizing hint of leg. Her hair was pulled back from her delicate face, and she peeked up at him through her thick and surprisingly dark eyelashes. Too much? She asked again anxiously, and he shook his head. Never. You should have bought yourself jewelry. She opened her mouth to protest, but Evan shrugged. Next time. Come on, let me take you out. The fun of being out with Anna, Evan decided several hours later, was that she made everything seem new. She might have dressed the wealthy, but she certainly hadn't lived in their world. There was a real delight in taking her to one of the most exclusive restaurants in Manhattan, where the waiters knew him by name, and where she was treated like a princess. Part of his enjoyment was that she seemed so genuinely surprised whenever he offered her a new treat, some new pleasure she had never imagined before, whether it was caviar or a small ice cream sundae dusted with gold. After dinner, They ended up at a club owned by one of Evan's friends. The dance floor was uncomfortably crowded, so even though Evan had been entertaining fantasies of taking her in his arms for a slow dance, they settled into a booth with cocktails in front of them. "So, how are you liking the high life so far?" he asked, reaching across the table to capture her hand. Anna laughed in disbelief, looking around her. Her fingers automatically wrapped around his, and he liked that a whole lot. "Honestly, I'm wondering how you people manage to get up for work in the morning. You've already worked all day, and been to a benefit, and gone out on the town with me. I already feel like I could tumble into bed, and yet, I'm sure most of these people here are going to be going until dawn." Evan smiled. "Well, most of them don't have to work in the morning. But you do, don't you?" "I'm afraid I do." "Why?" The question made Evan look at Anna curiously. "Because I'm rich, and I like to stay that way." "So, when do you enjoy yourself?" Anna wondered, and Evan grinned. "Believe me, I find the time. I'm enjoying myself right now." He was going to lean across for a kiss. Damn whoever might be watching when he saw a familiar face in the crowd. Jones spotted him at the same time and came over to the booth, a grin on his face. "Out enjoying the town a little, old man." "Doing better than you are, Jones," said Evan unoffended. "I take it you cleared things up with MacArthur?" "Yeah, I did," Jones said. "Hey, chickie. Take a walk, yeah? I want to have some words with the man." Evan scowled, and his previously good mood evaporated as Anna blushed and started to her feet. Right. I'll just take myself off for a bit, yes." "No, you're going to stay right where you are," Evan growled, squeezing her hand hard before letting it go. He was glad that his words seemed to cut through her embarrassment enough to keep her in her seat. Jones looked at Anna in irritation. "You can go find another one in a bit, Evan. I just need you for a moment." "No, you listen to me," Evan said with a cold anger that surprised even him. "You do not come up to me and speak to a woman like that. If you do it again, I swear to God I will kick you to the curb. There is absolutely no excuse for that kind of rudeness." Jones stared at him, his jaw dropping. "You can't mean it." "I'm dead serious. Straighten out or find a new job, Jones, and I'll go to that fiber exhibit opening that Anna wants to go to without a single thought for you at all." Jones gave them both a level, venomous look, but then he shrugged as if it was no matter to him at all. "All right then. Don't mind me. I guess I've had a few too many, right? I'll catch up with you in the office." "Yeah, go sleep it off," Evan growled, only partially appeased as Jones slouched away. Then he turned back to Anna. "I'm sorry about that. He's my business partner, not my friend. I don't know much about he interacts with women outside the office." It felt like a lame excuse even to him. Anna shook her head, but he could tell that there was something troubling her. "A lot of men are like that," she said, looking down. "Especially when you get to the circles that you run in. They really do see a lot of women as accessories, disposable toys they can throw away because there will always be another one." "I'm not like that," Evan said firmly, and she smiled at him. He could still see the edges of fear around her expression, and he felt another surge of irritation at his business partner. "I know you're not," Anna said softly, and she leaned across to plant a gentle kiss on his cheek. For some reason, that simple and sweet gesture touched him in a way that their kisses from before simply hadn't. "Thank you for standing up for me." "Don't thank me for being a decent human being," Evan said. "But I will say that my taste for being out and about has gone. Will you come back home with me?" She leaned back for a moment, looking at him, and Evan wondered what it was she saw in the dim light of the club. Whatever it was, though, she smiled and nodded. "Yes. I want to go home with you."
Chapter 6. Anna.
Anna knew exactly what was going to happen as they rode the elevator up to the penthouse, the tension between them growing thicker by the minute. And she wanted it. She'd wanted it since the moment Evan walked into Monterey's. She wanted it more than ever now, after spending an incredible evening in his company, culminating with him dispatching his boorish partner. Evan was the complete package: brains, manners, kindness, and looks. Gosh. His looks. "When I get you in those doors, you are going to be mine," Evan murmured, leaning in and cutting into Anna's thoughts. "You can say no, you can leave if you want, but otherwise, you are going to belong to me." "Evan," she whispered, unable to tear her eyes from his gaze. "As I said, you can leave if you want. Otherwise, though, I am going to take you. I'm going to make you feel everything I've been thinking about all damn day. All damn month. You should know what it means if you stay with me tonight, Anna." There was no part of her that wanted to run at all. Instead, all that mattered was getting closer to him, exploring the hunger that he had woken in her. "I am not going anywhere," she said, and the look he gave her was pure victory. When he locked the door behind them, there was something final about it. There was no going back, and if Anna were honest with herself, she didn't even want to. What she wanted was Evan, and when he swept her up in his arms, she whimpered because all she wanted was more. "Gosh, you look so damn beautiful tonight," he growled, sweeping her up in his arms and carrying her through his huge apartment to the bedroom before Anna even had a chance to look around. "Do you know what I want to do to you?" "No." She twined her arms around his neck and smiled. "But maybe you'll show me?" He grinned at her response and playfully guided her toward the bed. Anna felt slightly disheveled, her hair tumbling loose, her skirt a little wrinkled, but she couldn't deny the thrill of the moment. "One day I might sweep you off your feet entirely," he teased with a sparkle in his eye, "but tonight I'll try to behave." She laughed, caught between embarrassment and delight, sensing the undercurrent of affection in his words. "Come here," he said more softly, drawing her close. His tone carried a quiet authority, but instead of feeling overpowered, Anna felt safe, seen in a way she hadn't in years. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his gaze warm and steady as it traced her face. Anna's breath caught, and for a moment the world around them seemed to fade. She felt an almost overwhelming awareness of him, his nearness, his steady presence, the way his attention wrapped around her completely. The air between them grew still, and when he reached for her hand, she let him draw her closer, her heart pounding. He brushed a stray lock of hair from her cheek, his touch lingering just long enough to make her skin tingle. "You did this for me," he said quietly, his voice full of wonder. She could only nod, unsure her voice would work at all. Then with a soft smile, he pulled her into a kiss. It was unhurried and deep, a mingling of breath and unspoken promises. Anna melted into it, feeling the rush of emotion sweep through her. When they finally parted, his forehead rested gently against hers. "You're extraordinary," he whispered. In that moment, Anna knew she wasn't just caught in attraction, she was standing at the edge of something far more profound.
Chapter 7. Evan.
Weeks later. "So, I'll see you tonight?" Evan asked, toggling between his computer and the call with Anna. "Well, that order on the charcoal suit I wanted for you hasn't gone through. I really do need to spend some time tracking it down." He cut her off, not about to stand for the notion of not seeing her. "Well, if the suit's for me, I'd say it's not as important as spending the evening with you." "Really?" she teased, the soft lilt to her voice arousing him right there in his office. "Well, it's not going to be my fault if you end up going around naked." He smirked. "Well, if I'm going around naked, then I'll have to stick to the penthouse, and of course, you'd have to be there to keep me company." Anna laughed at him, and Evan realized all over again how delighted he was to hear Anna's joy. Making her happy had quickly become his main reason for living. Hearing her laugh, seeing her smile, watching the mischief light up her eyes left him feeling complete, even though he'd never once before ever thought of his life as anything but full. But for the last few weeks, when they were making love, when they were seeing the opera, when they were simply sitting and eating, the words "I love you" trembled on his tongue. The only thing that had stopped him from saying them was the fact that surely that was ridiculous. He was too old to fall in love. They were too different, and she was too young. None of that had stopped that feeling from being true, however, and he knew that sooner or later he would say it. It would simply be inevitable. His thoughts were full of Anna, and he nearly called her again. It didn't matter if it was the middle of the day. He wanted to see her. However, just as he was reaching for his phone, there was a brisk knock at his door. Mary, his personal assistant and solid friend of 10 years, came in, and he frowned at the expression on her face. "That doesn't look good." "I'm afraid it's not, boss. We lost the Islington account." "What?" Thoughts of Anna vanished from his mind. "How the hell did we lose it?" "It was investors from Morocco," Mary said grimly. "They outbid us." "Morocco?" Evan scoffed. "That's impossible. They don't have that kind of buying power." "They do, if they go in with foreign investors." Evan's eyes narrowed. "That's not something they have ever done before." "Don't give me your famous angry look, boss," Mary warned. "This isn't my fault." "I know exactly what you mean, though. They don't really go in for that kind of deal. They don't like sharing ownership, so someone must have made a very, very good case." She let the sentence dangle meaningfully, and Evan scowled. "Unless someone could tell them that we wouldn't go any higher." "Yes. I've wondered if there was a leak for some time," Mary admitted. "These last few years, for want of a better term, have been weird." "Weird?" Evan frowned. "This is the first I'm hearing about that." "Why?" "They were small things," she replied, "things that aren't terribly meaningful on their own. You'd have said it was paranoia or ridiculousness if I'd brought each one up, and you'd have been right. But even alone, this would be disturbing." "It is," he agreed. "Get me a list of everyone who knew about this. I don't care how high or low they are. If they had access to the information that broke this deal, I want to see them." "Right, boss. On it." Mary left, closing the door behind her softly, and Evan leaned back in his chair, staring out sightlessly over the city. The loss of the deal was not a huge blow. The board would be displeased by it, but that was nothing new. However, there had been one other person who had known about the deal, and how far Evan was willing to go with it, wasn't there? Evan spent a lot of idle moments thinking about the first time that Anna had fitted him with his new suit. It was a treasured memory, the first time he had kissed her. Now, though, he remembered talking on the phone to Jones. He remembered how much he had said. For a moment, Evan wanted to call Anna. He wanted to demand that she tell him if she had sold that information to foreign investors, and whether she had meant to do more. Just the thought of accusing her left him with a sick feeling in his stomach. He shook his head. He cared for Anna. Perhaps he even loved her. He couldn't accuse of her something like that without more evidence. So, he didn't call her after all. Instead, he went back to work.
Chapter 8. Anna.
Anna was delighted to be going to the opening of the fiber arts exhibit at the museum, but she was also secretly relieved that she was there with Evan. She wasn't sure what to think. He had been oddly distant for the past week or so. When she came over to his penthouse when they met for lunch, there was something distracted about him. Sometimes it was like he seemed to look right through her. He told her he was busy at work and that there were many things that needed to be taken care of, but she had the idea that there was something else going on. Anna pushed aside her doubts. He was a busy man, and when they were in bed together, everything still felt right. And even if he was distracted, on nights where he did something like this, taking her out to something that she cared about so very fiercely, she could feel his affection. "I think I love him." The thought came to her all unbidden, as Evan examined a medieval tablecloth that was on display. "I'm glad you're here to tell me about all of this," he said with a faint smile. "I'm afraid I would think it's all prints and silly furniture." "Well, it is printed fabric and silly furniture, but what you need to do is to look closer, to look at who made these things and why. There's no such thing as extra detail, not when everything was so costly to produce." Anna could talk about textiles for days, but instead of cutting her off, Evan wanted to know more and more about each piece, which made her fall that much deeper in love with him, for understanding that fashion was more than a job for her. They paused in front of a sapphire blue gown, with wide skirts and a luxurious silken sheen to it. It was scattered with diamonds, and the luxurious embroidery, the placard told them, was pure gold. Evan raised his eyebrows at it. Well, that's some impressive, conspicuous consumption, and that's coming from me. Anna smiled. When you are marrying a man and you want to impress him, it makes sense. Evan looked at her curiously. It's a wedding dress? It's not white though. White wedding dresses are a Victorian thing, she explained, specifically a Queen Victoria thing. She got married in white, and then everyone thought that looked so neat, they did the same. Soon enough, it became a tradition. It never originally meant that the bride had never been with someone or anything like that. And you're not, is that why you always wear black lace? It was uttered so casually that Anna almost missed it, but then she looked at him with a blush, glancing around. We're in public, she murmured, and with a grin, he leaned closer to her. You really love black lace when we're in the bedroom. Don't think I haven't noticed. It's what I look good in, she whispered. When he put on that silken, soft voice with an edge of steel underneath it, it stopped mattering who might be listening or what they might think of her. All that mattered was pleasing him, because when she pleased him, he would make her feel oh so good. Oh, I know you look good in black. You look so exquisite, actually, that it's all I can do to stop myself from ripping each lacy thing off your perfect body. I don't destroy every last garment because I know you love the damn things. I don't love them. I love you, she wanted to say, a full shudder going through her body, and her hand tightening on his arm. His lips were next to her ear. To the people looking on, it might have looked as if he was whispering a secret to her. I love you in black, Anna. But I think I might want you in white next. I want you to find the most elegant white lacy underthings you can. Tasteful, expensive. Maybe the whole white purity tradition thing came with Queen whatever's gown, but you're pure whether or not I've taken you 100 times. You're so damn pure, Anna, that I can barely stand it sometimes. I want to spread you out on my bed as if you've never had a dirty thought in your life, and I want to just mess you up. Anna almost trembled at his hungry words, barely resisting her urge to yank him into a ferocious kiss that would prove for sure that there wasn't much pure about her when Evan Sheffield was standing so close to her that she could feel his arousal against her stomach, and she could more than match it with her own damp, hungry heat. I'll wear whatever you want, Evan. He smiled and stepped away then, and it was as if time had restarted. She was back in the museum, and no one walking around them had noticed that anything strange had happened at all. White, sweetheart. For my eyes only. He touched her cheek, the heat in his eyes receding to a deep tender warmth, and she smiled. For your eyes only. They were about to continue walking around, when a man she had never met before ran up to them. Evan scowled, putting his body between the stranger and Anna. Then his eyes widened with recognition. Peters. What in the name of God are you doing here? Sorry, boss, the man said apologetically. I came as soon as I could. Mary sent me. Why? Evan demanded. She knows better than to cut into my time with Anna. Because the board is forcing a vote. Tonight. It's going to take place. Peters's eyes widened as he glanced at his phone. Oh gosh, I got here as fast I could, but it's in about half an hour or so. They are taking the chance to vote you out, sir. Anna was confused about what was going on, but she didn't have to understand to see Evan's face go white with rage. Those sneaky sons of... Evan shook his head, and to Anna it looked as if he were shaking off the rage that had possessed him for a moment. She could see the anger drain away, and underneath it was the cold and calculating businessman who had won his fortune before he was 26. She shivered a little. She cared for Evan deeply, and she knew deep in her heart that this care was turning into love, but at the end of the day, there was a core of coldness to him that made her shiver. Where is this happening? The boardroom downtown. It's a physical meeting, it's in the charter, it has to be. And of course, they're counting on me not being able to get back for it, because no one ever told me it was happening. All right. I can make that, but I need to leave now. Evan nodded at Anna. Take her back to my place, Peters. I need to move fast.
Evan,
Anna said uncertainly, not comfortable with leaving with a man she didn't know. He shook his head. I'm sorry to cut the evening short, darling, but I need to take care of this. Just be careful, all right? She had no idea what might hurt him at a board meeting, but there was something dangerous and charged about Evan now, something that felt more like a fighter than a civilized CEO. Always. I'll speak with you tonight. He leaned in to kiss her, and where she had expected something soft, what he gave her was hard and almost dirty. When he pulled away, Anna knew that her lips were red and her eyes wide. With nothing more than that, Evan strode off for the car, and Peter stepped forward. Anna was grateful that if he had an opinion about her relationship with his employer, he kept it to himself. Come on, I'll take you home, he said, and she nodded. As they drove, Anna told herself that everything was fine. Whatever happened at work didn't touch them at home. She decided that when Evan got home, she would do her best to be soothing, to let him rest after what sounded like what might be an ordeal. She wanted to take care of him, she realized, and the thought opened inside her like a flower made of fire.
Chapter 9. Evan.
When the last board member left with a chastened look on his face, Evan finally let himself collapse into the chair at the head of the long boardroom table. His head ached, and he couldn't seem to let go of the adrenaline that was still pumping through him. He had almost lost his company. The thought echoed in his head like a bell. This company that he had built from the ground up with long nights, insane risks, and so many contracts and deals, he had almost lost it all. He would still have a great deal of money, but the work of his life would have been gone. Now that the problem was dealt with, and the board members reminded of what he did for them and how tied they were to him, he could feel the rage that had bubbled up at the thought of having what was his taken away from him. Someone was responsible for this, and the suspicions he harbored since they lost out on the big deal to the Moroccan investors bloomed into livid fire. Someone had known that they could not afford to go higher in the Islington deal. And now, tonight, someone had known that he was going to be distracted and not around to defend his position. Some part of him wanted to deny it. Anna surely couldn't have betrayed him like that, but when the pieces were all spread out in front of him, they began to click together with a distressing completeness. Evan took care of his employees and his partners. They had never betrayed him before. But Anna was new. Anna, he had no previous history with. Anna was a girl with nothing except the wage he paid her. Could she have betrayed him for a chance at something even better? His stomach turned over, and the rage that had been simmering ever since the museum boiled over. When he arrived home to the penthouse in Manhattan, the lights were dim and candles were lit. He wondered sardonically if she had been ready to comfort him after the loss of his own damn company. Anna, where the hell are you? She appeared immediately from the bedroom, her eyes dark in the dim light. He raked her up and down with a scathing glance that made her wince. Even in his fury, he could see how beautiful she was wrapped in a silk kimono. It was one he had bought for her, and it draped sensuously against what he knew was bare skin. Evan. Save it, he snapped. Your little ploy didn't work. Her eyes widened, and he wondered how hard she had worked on her expression of wide-eyed surprise. Had someone told her the coup had failed and prepared her for disappointment? What ploy? She asked, her innocent act further infuriating him. She had no right to wear white, damn her, if that's what she had on under the silk. There was nothing pure about this woman. She was a snake, and he'd fallen for her act. Don't play innocent with me, he snarled. You set me up. You told the board when I would be unavailable, didn't you? You nearly lost me my damn company. Evan. Stop this. Anna cried, her eyes so wide with shock that he almost believed her dismay. Almost, but not quite. I have no idea what you are talking about. Suddenly, he found that he couldn't stand to listen to her protestations. On the ride over, Evan had thought about drawing it out, making her confess, and making her at least acknowledge what she had done to him, to the both of them. He had wanted to find out if she was sorry, and if she'd cared even a little about him, as he'd come to care for her. To his disgust, Evan realized that somewhere in the back of his mind he needed her to be sorry. If she had told him what she did, if she swore that it would never happen again, he would be willing to forgive her. He would keep her and forget about what she had done, even love her still. Evan snorted a hard laugh, shaking his head. He would say that she had turned him into a fool, but it seemed as if he had always been one. "Get out of here," he said. "Make it quick. I'm not going to turn you out in that robe, but if you stick around too long, I might change my mind." Anna didn't seem to know when to give up. She ignored his ominous warning, instead crossing the floor towards him. She was shaking, but she still did it. If she had been anyone else, if this was any other situation, he would have said she looked brave. "Evan, stop this please," she said softly. "I don't understand. Tell me what's happening. Please. You can't do this to us without letting me, I don't know, defend myself. I don't even know my crime. Please." Evan thought that he was going to hang on to his temper, and he thought so right up until the moment she touched him. Her hands on his arm sent that familiar shiver of want and lust through him, and he couldn't take it. He knew her hands so well. He had touched them, caressed them, showed her how to move them over his body and her own. He knew how clean and short she kept her fingernails, and how she had earned every callus from meticulous hand sewing. When she touched him, it felt as if something had snapped in his mind. Instead of pushing her away, he grabbed her by the lapels of the kimono, dragging her against him. He almost kissed her with all the fury and rage he felt, but somewhere deep in his mind, Evan knew that he would never be able to send her away if he did that. "Get out," he snarled. "You lost, Anna. You lost, and I never want to see you again. Get the hell out before I forget that I'm a gentleman and force you out just as you are. Pack up, get out, and leave that apartment I paid for by the end of the week. You no longer work for me. Every perk is forfeited." He saw the fear in her eyes, and grimly satisfied, he let her go. He turned towards the window, looking out over the Manhattan skyline. He didn't look back until he heard her soft steps move from the bedroom to the door. She hesitated before she opened the door, and for a moment, Evan wanted to call her back to figure out why she had decided to betray him. Then the door opened and shut, and it was over. Evan felt the rage ebbing away, and underneath it there was only grief. He had never thought that his life was empty before Anna, but now that she was gone, all he could feel was a vast and aching loss. It made no sense. When she was gone, Evan could see that Anna had changed something essential in him. Now he had to figure out if he could survive her loss while so changed.
Chapter 10. Anna.
In the cab ride back to her apartment, Anna felt numb, as if she were seeing the whole world through a layer of thick glass. She flinched a little when she thought of the fury on Evan's face and the leashed violence in his hands when he had grabbed her. It was strange. When he grabbed her by the kimono lapels, she had been afraid, but it was not a physical fear. She was not afraid of what he might do to her. Evan would never hurt her physically. Of that she was sure. But emotionally, he'd destroyed her. And the worst part was, she had no idea why. Everything had been so good, so right, and then, what had happened? What could have made that tenderness in his eyes turn to such hate in less than a day? It was too big for Anna to even wrap her mind around. Instead, all she could do was hang on to the door handle, while the taxi driver talked about the terrible New York weather and the other drivers on the road. She felt as if everything was far away. Nothing could touch her. She overtipped the driver and walked up the 2 floors to her apartment. It wouldn't be hers for much longer, but for at least a few days she had somewhere to stay. She had saved enough from her absurdly high salary that she wouldn't be destitute. She could start over again. Somewhere. But as she reached the door, she felt tears threatening all over again. She didn't want to start over, damn it. Not without even knowing what went wrong. Once she walked into her apartment and locked the door behind her, however, all she could do was sit on the couch, letting helpless tears fall from her eyes. Eventually, she changed into a comfortable pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt, gently folding away the kimono to return to Evan after dry cleaning, but there was nothing she could do to stop the slow seepage of tears and grief. She looked up from what felt like hours later, when she heard the soft knock on the door. Though she knew better, Anna couldn't help but hope that perhaps it was Evan, come to his senses. She took a deep breath, had a moment to regret what she was wearing, and went to the peephole. Instead of Evan on the other side of the door, however, it was the unpleasant man she had met weeks ago, Jones. He stood on her doorstep with a faintly nervous expression. "What is it?" she asked without opening the door. "Sheffield sent me," he said. "He has a message for you." "What is it?" Through the peephole, she saw Jones look up and down the hallway. He seemed irritated to her, frustrated. "I'd rather not shout the message down the hall, you know?" Anna bit her lip, torn between pushing him away and holding onto a flicker of hope that Evan might come to his senses. Her hand reached slowly toward the lock. Before she could speak, the door suddenly swung open, and Jones stepped inside. The suddenness startled her, and she took a step back, heart racing. He moved around the room with an air of cold determination, his gaze sharp and unyielding. Anna tried to steady her breathing, feeling trapped, not by force but by the weight of the moment. Jones spoke quietly, his words firm yet unclear through the tension in the air. Anna's eyes darted around, searching for a way to stay calm, to hold on to herself. When she closed her eyes briefly, trying to gather strength, she sensed his presence nearby, his cold stare heavy upon her. Though the room felt suffocating, Anna resolved to keep fighting, not with force but with her will. "So you're awake." "It doesn't matter, I'm almost done." She watched as he took a large wad of cash from his pocket, stuffing it in her jewelry drawer. He looked at her with amusement, his arms crossed over his chest. "You know, it's ridiculous, really, how easy it was to manipulate Sheffield. The man has always had his blind spots, and the loyalty of others is one of them. I suppose that's the only reason that I've gotten away with things for so very long." Anna shifted on the bed, the frame creaking underneath her, and at the same time she heard a creaking that she was sure belonged to her front door. Hope rose in her chest, and she endeavored to keep her eyes firmly on Jones. He cocked his head to one side, as she made some desperate sounds in her throat, trying to block any sound of someone else entering her apartment. "You want the gag off? I suppose that's fine. I'm no longer very worried about what you might do. If you shout, I will smash you. Nod to show me you understand." She knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he meant what he said. She nodded, and he came to remove the duct tape from her mouth. There was something almost freakish about how gently he did it, because she was now certain that he had no interest in her surviving this evening. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "From what everyone told me, there are lots of reasons to be loyal to Evan." "Keep him talking, just keep him talking." He gave her an amused look that didn't manage to hide the madness in his eyes. "Why wouldn't I? Every man who has a fortune wouldn't mind it being bigger. Though I suppose you wouldn't know that, tacky little thing like you. Sheffield's always had a taste for girls from the rougher side of the tracks. You were hardly the first, you know." She allowed him to see her wince, and he came to stand close to the edge of the bed, leaning over her. "Though I can certainly see what he saw in you. Pluck you out of whatever pond he found you in, dress you up, make you speak, you can be quite beautiful." She would have preferred it if he kept insulting her. There was a lascivious tone to his voice that made her skin crawl, and she wondered how far she would be willing to go to play for time. "Don't," she said, making sure that the fear she felt was in her voice. Just as she thought it would, it made his eyes light up with interest. "Do you like rough play, sugar? The two of us could have such fun." To her horror, he ran a hand down her cheek, sliding his finger along her lower lip. She didn't quite have the nerve to bite him, but a creak of the floorboards from the hallway got her attention. Just keep going, let him think he's won. You can, if you want, Anna said, her voice faltering. I'd let you. Jones looked interested in that. Oh, really? Yes. Things you would like. I'll show you what he showed me. Jones laughed, and she knew beyond a shadow of a doubt he planned to kill her before the night was over. He thought she was just an idiot girl who thought she could save her own life. Well, I am curious to see how Sheffield gets it. Just rubbers. Please. They're in the drawer behind you. Shaking his head at her foolishness, Jones stepped back from the bed and started for the dresser. Anna almost wished she could see his face when he realized that Evan stood in the doorway. Her own eyes went wide as the man she loved strode into the room, bearing down on Jones so swiftly and silently that Jones barely had a chance to realize what was happening. Evan quickly whirled him around, pinned him against the dresser, and began to slam his large fist into Jones' ugly face over and over again. Anna had never been a violent person, but there was a brutal satisfaction in hearing the wet gurgle of Jones trying to explain himself, and Evan cursing him angrily. Don't kill him, Evan, she finally managed through chattering teeth. Please. Just call the police. I already did when I realized he was in the apartment with you, he replied, finally letting Jones slump to the floor, beaten senseless. I'm only sorry I had to wait so long to act. I didn't want to try anything until he was actually away from you. When he had bound Jones with the same duct tape used on Anna, he turned to Anna with a look of intense remorse and horror on his face. Gently he worked the duct tape off her skin, and then gathered her into his arms and held her close until the police arrived. Anna couldn't have spoken even if her mouth hadn't still ached. She pressed into Evan and closed her eyes, willing the last brutal hours away. Then it was a rush of statements and interviews, until finally Jones was taken away, and they were left once more in silence. This time, Evan hesitated before opening his arms to her again, as though he was afraid she would reject him, but the thought never even crossed Anna's mind as she walked straight into his big, warm embrace. You must be tired, Evan whispered, folding her in tight. I don't think I'm ever going to sleep again, she whispered. Anna, he whispered back. Anna, I am so sorry. So you figured out that I wasn't the one who went behind your back to sabotage your company? Even in her own ears, her words were bitter. Evan winced. Yes. Gosh, yes. There were reasons that I thought that, but none of them were good enough to accuse you, to treat you like this. I sent you home, to this monster. She stopped him, drawing back to look into his handsome face. No. What Jones did here. I'm going to be reeling from it for a good long while, but you didn't cause this. This wasn't your fault. What happened before, between us at the penthouse though? That was. Evan flinched, but she didn't let up. All of the anger that had welled up in her when he had accused her roared up. Why didn't you even let me try to explain? Why would you even think that I would do such a thing? You had the opportunity, he said lamely, drawing away and stuffing his hands in his pockets like a shamed boy. So did a lot of people at your company. Anna cried. Everyone talks about how smart you are, how your company is one that operates on a code of loyalty. It depends on that loyalty, and a man who took advantage of it nearly brought you down. Why was it so hard to extend that loyalty, that trust, to me? Evan hung his head, ashamed, and when he spoke again, there was something tearing in his voice, as if the words came from some deep well within him. Anna, I cannot tell you how sorry I am that this happened, that I didn't trust you, that I jumped to conclusions so quickly. I know where I stand with my business and the people who work for me, or at least I thought I did. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about so many things. But you didn't know where you stood with me, she asked incredulously. Evan, do you realize how much I had to trust you? I let you take me away from my job. I trusted you so much that I was willing to start my entire life over in a new place, to see if things went anywhere between us. Do you think that was easy for me? He shook his head. I know it wasn't. And I will say that today I know that I betrayed that trust. I might have broken it beyond repair. And I know I do not deserve forgiveness, and if you tell me to leave right now, I will. You can keep everything, Anna. You earned it. Those words might have hurt even more than his earlier ones. I don't want any of this, she yelled, waving her arm around at the lavish apartment. I didn't move to New York expecting any of this. I'm good at my work. I can find another job and pay my bills without your help, Evan. You said you thought I was talented. Was that also a lie? No. His face was ashen, his bright green eyes pained. None of it was, Anna. I am begging you, give me another chance. Anna felt as if her heart was being torn in two. She knew what the smart answer was after such a betrayal.
Evan.
If you give me a second chance, I swear to you, you will never need to give me a third, he said huskily. Let me be with you again. Let me show you that I have learned from this whole sorry mess. Anna, I love you. She could feel all the shields that had ever protected her heart falling down in a moment. The words, the ones she had always secretly dreamed of hearing, the ones she had never truly expected to hear from Evan, shook her to her core. He looked shocked that he had said it himself. He took her hands in his, and she felt warm for the first time that night. I love you. I love you, he repeated. It is the truth, and I never thought I would be able to say that to someone, but I want to say it to you now. I love you with all my heart. He swallowed hard. And if you cannot say it yet, I can wait. I will wait. I will prove myself to you in as many ways, and as many times as you ask. All I'm asking for, Anna? I love you. She whispered the words, but they might as well have been a shout. They had been hovering on the back of her throat for so long that she thought she might weep at finally speaking them. Instead, she smiled, and she allowed Evan to take her into his arms. Thank you, he whispered, burying his face in her hair. Thank you. I will prove every day that I am worthy of hearing those words. In Evan's embrace, Anna felt a deep sense of peace fall over her. This man was different from the one who had earlier betrayed her. She could feel it in her bones. I love you, she whispered again, and she felt the truth of it roar through her. An affirmation, a celebration, and a blessing all rolled into one.
Epilogue. Anna took a deep breath, and the site organizer smiled at her encouragingly. Almost. The music started, and as the organizer waved her forward, Anna took her first step onto the long carpet. The hall was full of people who craned their necks to see her, but she had eyes only for one person. Evan waited for her at the end of the aisle, and with her bouquet in hand, she felt a flutter of mingled excitement and happiness. He had been stunned that she wanted to design both his suit and her own dress. Let someone else do the work, he said. It's your wedding. You should get to enjoy it. She had tried to explain it to him, but she wasn't sure he understood. Clothes were Anna's art, her way of expressing her will into the world. With every stitch that she put into the pure white silk of her gown, with every adjustment she made to the dark wool of his suit, she was putting her hopes and her love for her marriage into the world. Anna had nearly cried the first time she saw Evan in his suit, perfectly fitted to his body. He looked like a dream, like someone she could barely believe was real. Now he was waiting for her at the end of the aisle, and she knew when he finally saw her. His eyes lit up like a Christmas tree, and despite the solemnity of the occasion, he grinned. She knew that the dress, elegant, blindingly gorgeous, and perfectly fitted to her, showed him what she had tried to say all along. She loved him, and the proof was in every stitch she made. You're amazing, he whispered, and then they both turned to the officiant, ready to begin their lives together. The end. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Boss's Claim by Michelle Love. Now please listen to a sneak peek for Fake It for Real by Jessica Fox. Finn.
Through the haze of a fading hangover, I felt the presence of someone else in my bed. I knew I was in my bed because the smell of freshly cleaned linens filled my nostrils as I inhaled deeply. It was one of the things I always did upon waking. Smell the sheets, and then try to piece together the events of the night, once I had deciphered if I was home or in someone else's bed. Around 3 nights each week I would find myself with the same predicament, wondering who slept soundly beside me, and where I had ended up after a night of drinking way too much, losing all my inhibitions. The person beside me stirred, then draped one long arm over my side. I always went to sleep, facing away from the person I had gone to bed with. It made slipping off the bed and getting the hell out of a stranger's bedroom much easier. And many times I'd had to do just that. Of course, when I woke up in my own home, slipping away was not an option. But I always had my driver waiting for the woman to walk out the front door so that he could drive her home or to wherever she wanted to go. Moving slowly out from under the slender arm that laid across my side, I got out of bed without making a sound and headed to the bathroom to clean myself up. The mirror was never my friend on mornings like these, so I avoided my reflection at all costs until I had showered, shaved, and done the rest of my business. An hour later, I emerged from the bathroom looking like myself again, ready to face the world and the young lady who was now sitting up in my bed. I looked at her face and could not recall a thing about her, other than fleeting scenes of a night of intimacy that didn't seem that memorable. "Morning. Did you sleep well?" She ran a hand through her messy dark locks. "I think so. I drank a little too much last night. I don't normally do things like this." "Do you?" "All the time." I threw her my signature charming smile to ease my words. "So let me walk you through the process of one-night stand etiquette. We wake up. We get dressed. We exchange pleasant goodbyes, and we don't expect a thing from the other party." She looked a little taken aback. "Finn, are you sure you want me to just walk away from you after how much we connected last night?" Rats, she remembers my name, and I've got no clue what hers is. "Oh well. That man you met last night is not the real me. That guy only comes out at night, and after a few drinks. I'm actually a total bore most of the time. Do yourself a favor, and don't think too hard about what happened. We had a good time, but now it's over and might not ever happen again. Or it might happen again if we end up at the same place, and we both want the same thing. But that's highly unlikely, at least in my case it is." "Okay then." She pulled the sheet around her and got up, moving about the room, retrieving her clothes that were scattered about, and then going to the bathroom to put them on. I was glad she wasn't the kind to try to argue that what we had was special. Mostly because it never was. Not to me, at least. Waiting patiently, as I had nothing else to get to anyway, I sat down on the settee at the end of the bed and checked out my cell phone. There were some random pictures of us dancing and laughing, and then there were some more decadent pictures of our night in bed. Damn, did I really let her do that to me? Drinking makes me do things I wouldn't normally do, if I were sober. But boredom leads me to the stuff more often than I should. I let alcohol take the lead, following along as an alternate personality comes out in small amounts until it takes me over completely, and then the hedonist in me comes out. I do whatever I want to, so long as it doesn't involve hurting anyone. What had once been a once-a-week habit had turned to something that happened every other night. I had inherited that from my carefree father. I was his only child, and he'd had me late in his life, though early in my mother's life. She'd been his 20-year-old maid, and he'd been in his 60s when the two spent a few nights doing the horizontal bop, as my father called it. Of course, he'd never married my mother. He'd never married anyone. He preferred freedom over all things. He did take care of me and all I needed, though. I was the one person in the whole world that he'd made a commitment to, and he had stuck by it for my entire 32 years of life. He'd sent me to college at UCLA, where I got a bachelor's degree in art history. I hadn't cared what I went to school for, since I would never have to work. Richard, that's what I called my father, as he didn't like to be labeled in any way, not even in a fatherly way, had chosen my major. He said it would make me more interesting if I knew about art and the history of it all. I supposed he was right. I was popular at his friends' parties because they all had expensive art that they knew next to nothing about, and I could tell them all about their outrageous purchases. People with more money than they could ever spend tend to spend money on things that they believe will add to their fortunes one day. Art was one of those expenditures that anyone worth their salt as a millionaire or billionaire had plenty of. Looking at the painting I'd scored at the last auction my father and I had attended, I took in the priceless piece of art. Well, there eventually was a price put on it, as the auctioneer enticed bidders to start the action at $70 million. And it kept creeping up, several $100,000 at a time. 2 hours later, I told my father that I would love to have that painting for my bedroom. So he upped the ante by $1 million, and I went home with an Amedeo Modigliani oil painting that he'd done in 1917 titled Nu Couché. The title was French and it meant nude reclining, and boy was that broad reclining. A hand landed softly on my shoulder as I admired the work of art that hung on the wall facing my bed. She'd emerged from the bathroom without me detecting her movements, which meant she was accustomed to sneaking around. I didn't like sneaky people at all. "Did you paint that, Finn?" "No." I got up to see her out, texting my driver to be at the front entrance, ready to go. It's a rather famous painting done by a rather famous French artist. I won't bore you with the details. "Oh, a French artist, huh?" explains the woman's hairy armpits. "Gross." I thought the hair under the French woman's arms was on the beautiful side. When a woman felt beautiful all on her own, not having to shave every speck of hair from her body, I appreciated that. Not that I'd met any woman who was like the one in the painting. I had the idea those sorts of women no longer existed in today's world, at least not in the world I inhabited. Not interested in getting into the history of the painting, I asked, "Are you hungry?" "Starving," she gushed as she leaned in and took my arm, wrapping herself around it. "Are you taking me to breakfast?" "No. I'll have my driver take you anywhere you want, though." "You don't want to come with me?" "No thanks." As we walked down the stairs, I saw her scanning the entrance. "I was totally blasted last night. I had no idea you lived in such an amazing home." She batted her false eyelashes at me. "I had no idea you've made so much of yourself, Finn." "I didn't," I said. And then I heard my father, as he came into the foyer from his office just off it. "I did." He held out his hand to the woman on my arm as we paused in front of him. "And this young goddess is?" She giggled. "Oh my gosh, aren't you handsome?" She held out her hand and my father took it, kissing the top of it like he did with every woman he met. "And so formal too. My name's Sydney. Sydney Stone. And I am Finn's father, Richard Murphy. It is a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Stone." "It's a pleasure to meet you too, Mr. Murphy." Mr. Murphy was my father. I am merely Richard. My father was in his 90s, but he acted like he was still a young pup. I found it funny. "She's on her way out," I interrupted their little exchange, for my father could make that idiotic shit last a lifetime if I let him. "I'm having my driver take her to breakfast." "It's past noon, Finn," he let me know. "So, he'll take her to lunch then." I moved toward the door, ready to say goodbye to last night's woman and move on with my life. "Thanks for the good time, Sydney." "You too, Finn. Should we exchange phone numbers?" I shook my head. I wasn't that type of guy. Not on the first date. Not that it was a date at all, but more like a hookup. So not on the first, second, or even third hookup. After that, who knows? Not me. I've never had more than 3 hookups with anyone, ever. So don't be offended by anything I say. I say it to all the girls. "Have there been many?" she asked with wide eyes. "I suppose you could say that." "Should I be worried about anything?" She ran her hand in a circle over her nether regions. "You know what I'm asking, right? I get tested regularly, and am in excellent physical health. So you have nothing to worry about from me." "Good." She breathed a sigh of relief. Well, I guess this is goodbye then. One last kiss? I settled for pecking her cheek, as that's all anyone got from me before we parted ways. Have a great life. You too. She looked around as she stepped out the door. Seems like you've already got a great life though. I know, right? Bye now. I closed the door before she could say anything else. When I turned to go and see what the chef could stir up for me to eat, I found my father still standing right there. Oh hey. Patting him on the shoulder, I stepped to the side and tried to walk away. Hang on, Finn. He reached out, grasping my arm. We need to talk. Come into my office. Richard, I am famished. Can we talk in the kitchen while Egan makes me something to eat? It won't take long for me to say what I need to say. Then you can get on to the kitchen. He led the way to his office, and I followed. Taking the seat on the other side of his desk as Dad took his chair behind it, I asked, "What's on your mind, Richard?" You are on my mind, Finn. I have been taking stock of my life recently, and have found that I come up short in certain areas. Areas that you have patterned yourself after your patriarch. Not sure what that means. I looked up at the enormous chandelier that hung high above his desk. Do you never worry that one day, this thing will come crashing down while you're sitting here toiling over whatever work it is that you do, and smash you into bits? I have never worried about that. The men who built this home for me were the finest craftsmen in the entire world. I trust their engineering and laborious work. I wouldn't sit under anything this big. Can we hurry this up, please? I had never liked coming into my father's office. Good things rarely came after being summoned into it. Nodding, he said, "Since you like to follow so closely in my footsteps, I feel it necessary to counsel you on where a life like mine will lead you. It's not the best place to be, Finn. It's lonely. I have never settled down with one woman. And now I am alone in life, and it's not the best feeling. You probably could get yourself some company if you wanted." I saw no reason for him to be alone. He had stopped socializing when he'd entered his 80s. The man never exactly said how old he was, preferring to refer to his age by the decade, the 80s, the 90s, etc. Carousing around the party scene to find a suitable woman to spend the night with is no longer an option for me, since I grow tired so easily nowadays. And hiring a woman is out of the question. I don't see why you say that. Terry's father hired a live-in mistress. Terry's father is only in his 60s. In other words, son, he is still a fully functioning man, and I am just the opposite of that. An old person's body can't do what a younger person's body can do. They make pills for that, I recommended. If you're too embarrassed to buy some, I'll get them for you. That is not what I am looking for in my life anymore. And one day, you will find yourself feeling the same way that I have for years now. Richard. I could not believe what my father was saying. Might I remind you of the cardinal rule you told me about after I hit puberty? I know what I said, but I was wrong. Yes, intimacy is a natural part of life, and no one should be ashamed of expressing the pleasure of it. Especially when that pleasure is found without needing a commitment. That said, there is only a certain window of time for which that is true. If you live life the way I told you was best, then all you have to look forward to are years of being alone. It's not the best. It's the worst way ever to live. I happen to love my life. I loved mine. Up until my body said no more. Now it would be nice to have a companion to hold hands with. Someone to wake up to each morning instead of an empty pillow. Someone to just talk to and grow old with. So young women are out for you? I asked. Is that what you're saying? Because we can make a visit to the old folks' home and find you an old woman who would probably love to get to come live here with you and do all that stuff you said you want now. I don't want some old woman who I don't even know. You just aren't understanding me at all, Finn. It's time to find a good woman and settle down with her, so that you two can begin living your lives together, instead of alone. That way, when the years have aged you both, You will have a bond that can't be broken. Sounds painful. I'd rather not. It's not as if a leopard can change his spots.
Cecile.
Sitting on top of a picnic table, I watched as my class of third graders played with each other during recess. My phone made a soft ding, so I pulled it out from the pocket of my skirt to see who had texted me. Mary, another third grade teacher at the school I worked for, sat next to me. Someone interesting texting you, Cecile? Well, I'd thought he was interesting, but from this text, I'm not thinking that way anymore. I rolled my eyes but psyched myself up to tell her everything. So, the backstory on Pete is that he and I were set up by a mutual friend who thought we'd have a lot in common since I'm a school teacher and he's a college professor. We went out to dinner last Friday night. He took me home and asked if he could come inside. When I declined, he nodded and said he understood. He didn't call the next day, and I didn't call him either. I've heard nothing from him the entire week, but now that it's Friday again, he texts. What does the text say? She asked, leaning over to peek at my phone. Oh, I see. Basically an invitation to skip the small talk, she said, eyebrows arching as she read. How'd you like to skip the formalities and get right to it? She scoffed. And I'm guessing that's his address? Did he really write that he hopes you'll show up dressed to impress? Another man who's after only one thing. I didn't bother to reply to the nasty text. Are there no gentlemen in Los Angeles anymore? You know, I'm not sure if there are any left anywhere. Everyone wants to just play the field and avoid commitment like the plague. The longest I've dated a man in the last few years is 10 dates before he just stopped calling. I eventually saw him out with someone else. The last guy I first dated wanted to spend more time in bed than he did actually talking to me. He would take me out to eat, and then ask if I wanted to watch a movie at his place. We'd go back to his, and then he wasted no time getting to the making out, followed by carrying me to his bedroom. It sounds romantic, Mary said with a gleam in her eyes. I've never been carried to bed by anyone. As romantic as it sounds, there was no romance there at all, and he most definitely did not want anything long-term. The last time I saw him was when I took a toothbrush and left it in his bathroom, so that I would be able to give my teeth a good scrubbing before leaving his apartment the next morning. You left something of yours behind? She asked with wide eyes. Wow. That was a big risk if you didn't talk to him about it before. I found that out the hard way. He changed his number and moved away only a couple of days after I left him, the next morning. That's a rookie mistake, Cecile. We had gone out each Saturday night for 6 months. I thought that was more than long enough for me to be able to leave behind a toothbrush. Guess I was wrong. You were probably his Saturday night girl, and he had others for the other nights, she said knowingly. That's how my brother works. He takes Sundays off for family. Other than that, he's got a different girl for each night of the week, and so far none of them have found out about what he's doing. I hadn't even thought of that. Maybe I want an old-school kind of man, the kind that the good Lord no longer makes. Maybe I should start looking for an older man. She snarled her lip. I'm not into old men. I'm not attracted to any. But if I could get to know one, I might like the way he treated me, then the attraction would surely come. I don't know. Maybe I should just wait for guys around my age to grow up a bit. I've just hit my 30-year mark. Surely, men in their 30s start to grow up and look for something that will last. My brother is 36. Well, that doesn't bode well for me then, does it? I couldn't deal with the dating scene in Los Angeles any longer. All I know is that I am out of it all. No more games. No more one-night stands. I'm out. No more dating for me. Not for at least a year. Shock filled her face. A year? An entire year? No intimacy for a year? None. I knew I had to stop trying to find the right man when he just didn't exist yet. I can't take another man wanting only one thing from me. At this stage of my life, I need more than intimacy from a partner. I would settle for just a satisfying time. I have a hard time finding even that. That's probably because you have no real connection with the men. Real feelings have to bring on better connections, and better connections have to mean better intimacy, right? It just has to work that way. And I am ready and willing to wait for that to happen, for me. So no more dating until I actually know the man first. And of course, I have to like him. I've been going out with just about anyone, so long as someone thinks I'll hit it off with the guy. So far I've gone along. But not anymore. You sound like you really mean that, Cecile? I do mean it. I'm so tired of all the fake stuff. I mean, I really was done. A year. At least 1 year. No men. But what if Mr. Right comes along, and you ignore him because of your little hiatus from men? She had a point. I won't ignore all men. If someone catches my attention, then I will see where that goes. But he's going to have to do a lot of talking, some mental connecting, way before we connect our bodies. But I seriously doubt that will happen, just at the moment I've finally sworn off men. She patted my hand, looking concerned. I'm just afraid that a year without a man, a year without being with a man will change you. I can't imagine that it will affect me that much. I mean, being with a stranger or a man who wants nothing from you isn't any good anyway, at least not for me. And you just proved that for yourself with what you said. We deserve more and we deserve better. I'm tired of acting as if all I want is intimacy as well. It's not true. I want so much more than that. Like a hand to hold as we grow old, she asked with a nod. I do want that. I want someone who will hold my hand when I have our babies. I want someone who will bring me chicken noodle soup when I have a cold. I want someone who will be happy just sitting with me on our worn-out sofa, watching television while we eat takeout food. Yes. Now you see what I'm getting at. I want to be happy with someone for many reasons, not just one. Intimacy is good and all, but it's not everything. We need more than that. We need someone who we can share everything with. And someone who wants to share everything with us. Mary nodded in agreement. You know, I dated this one guy for a few weeks and he refused to tell me what his middle name was. When I finally got him to tell me why he wouldn't, you'll never believe his reason. What could knowing his middle name possibly do for you, Mary? Well, he thought that if I knew his entire name, then I could sign his name to anything I wanted, and ruin him financially. The real kicker was that this guy had nothing. He drove his mother's car. He lived at his uncle's house, and he worked the night shift at Panjo Pizzeria. We have certainly found us some real winners, haven't we, Mary? I had stories like hers too. When I was in my early 20s, there was this guy they first went out with one time. He refused to let me see where he lived. And he said that it was because he didn't want me to try to stay with him. He'd had that happen to him too many times, he said. Apparently, women would come and not want to leave. Or so he said. I thought he was crazy. He sounds crazy. I stopped seeing him after he told me that. And then I got really curious, and did something so unlike anything I'd ever done before. What did you do? She asked curiously, a bubble of excited laughter about to escape. I stalked him one night. I put my palm on my face, shaking my head as I laughed. I borrowed a friend's car and followed this guy home. And what I found made me sick. What was it? When he pulled into the drive of a nice suburban home, 3 kids ran out to greet him. They hugged him and said how much they'd missed him while he was away at work. And then a woman came out with open arms and kissed him on the cheek. Mary's jaw dropped. He was married with children? I nodded. I had never quite gotten over that one. Not just married with children, but happily married, with children who adored him. And he'd looked as if he adored them all too. It made me sick. How could he be out on the dating scene when he had this wonderful family waiting for him at home? It made no sense. And what was worse, he'd lied about having to be away for the entire week. He'd worked right here in Los Angeles, with his home less than 30 minutes away. I know because I followed him home from there. What a jerk, Mary said as she snarled her lip. Did you get out of the car and tell the poor woman what he was doing? No. I couldn't have ever done that. She looked so happy. And there were the children to consider as well. Whatever he was doing, that was on him. I was sure that one day his wife would figure him out. Do you think that she ever did find out about his secret life? I have no idea. My ideal about love were a bit battered and bruised when I drove away that night. Everyone I tried dating after that guy had their own things too. One after another, bad guy after bad guy. You know what? She asked. It sounds like you're attracted to bad boys. I'm not, I said quickly. Well, it sounds like it. Maybe you just like that weird charisma bad boys all seem to have. Or the devilishly good looks that seem to guy with that kind of man. Angels and demons have been known to attract. The demon loves to pretend that he's good for her. But then he thinks he's good for everyone. And breaking an angel doesn't bother a demon one bit. Most times they actually blame the angel for falling for a man like him in the first place. Ain't that the truth? I asked as I laughed. I am a sucker for attractive guys. Aren't we all? I'm going to have to stop going after the looks that turn me on, and start looking deeper than that. Maybe talking to men who are a bit more average in the looks department is the first step I should take in finding a good man. If all you've been seeing are attractive bad boys, that could be your problem. She smiled. I know that's mine. I love those dang rebels. But then I hate them when I get replaced by another girl, whose heart they'll surely break as well. You know, the thing is that every single time, I fall for the looks and charm. Well, that's most likely not going to happen if we keep looking at guys like that. I had this friend when I was in college at UCLA. He was the most notorious bad boy on campus. The first time I saw him, he was hitting on this girl, and she was all infatuated with his looks and charm. The next day, I saw him using the same lines and tactics on another girl. And the day after that, it happened again. So when our eyes finally did meet, I just shook my head at him and walked on by without saying a word. We ended up being good friends, with absolutely no benefits. I guess that seeing him in action made my alarm bells go off, and stopped me from falling for his lines and charm the way the others had. She nodded her head. You knew better already. I nodded back. Exactly. I knew better than to set my sights on Finn Murphy. I wonder how he's doing nowadays.
Finn.
It had been a year since I'd seen my friend Cohen Nash. I'd met him on a trip to Austin, Texas, and he was the owner of a resort back in the Lone Star State. I stayed at Whispers Resort and Spa anytime I was in the state's capital. The nightlife was off the hook in that town. Cohen had been on his way out for a night on the town at the same time as me, and he'd offered to show me around. I'd found my equal in that man. Born to party, we both loved every element of the fast-paced club scene. Austin's famous 6th Street proved to be party central, and we'd gladly partaken. My friend had made some drastic changes in the year that had followed my visit, though. He'd found out that he had a secret daughter, and he'd ended up marrying her mother. If anyone would have asked me if that man could ever settle down with one woman, I would have said hell no. Apparently, I just didn't know Cohen well enough to make that assumption, though. But I wasn't going to stop being his friend just because he'd gone and put himself in the ranks of the unhappily married. I saw him sitting at the bar we'd agreed to meet at, a smile on his face. He got up as I approached, holding out his arms. Finn, my party partner. So good to see you. Sharing a bro hug, I patted him on the back. Good to see you too, party partner. You don't look nearly as bad as I thought a married man would look. And one with a child too. I thought you would have dark circles underneath your eyes, and wrinkles running across your forehead from all the aggravation you must be suffering from. I'm sure it will all catch up to you soon. Your confidence in me is a bit underwhelming, Finn. He sat back down at the bar, and I took the seat next to him. Barkeep, can you bring one of what I'm having to my dear friend here? I watched the bartender nod, And then I looked at the drink that sat on the bar in front of Cohen. "And what are we having this evening, Cohen?" He ran his hand down the tall glass, which was rimmed with red salt. "This is a Michelada, with Corona beer and top-shelf tequila." Pretty much anything with liquor got my heart pumping. "Sounds good. So, how have you been? I know you're expecting me to say that being married is really hard, and that it's not my cup of tea at all. But let me tell you, man, it's honestly fantastic. Stop playing with me." I took a drink of what the bartender placed in front of me. "Tasty. Thank you." I slid a $100 bill across the bar to him. "Keep us happy tonight, and there's more where that came from." "Will do, Captain." Gotta tip the bartender right off the bat before the place gets busy, or we'll be waiting forever later on. I hated to wait for more drinks, and Cohen used to hate it as well. "Yeah, I'm not going to go on a bender tonight, Finn. I've got an early morning meeting with a real estate guy. I was sent out here by my brothers to scout a location for a new resort we're thinking of building here in Los Angeles." Disappointment stabbed me a bit, as my old drinking and carousing buddy seemed to be long gone. "Oh, I see." I took another drink. "Well, I'm going to get shit-faced and find someone pretty to take home with me tonight. Sure you won't join me? Your wife isn't around to get mad at you for grabbing a piece of tail from a random stranger. And you know that I won't tell on you, Cohen." With a sigh, he said, "You know, I just don't want anyone other than Ember. Don't ask me to explain the sudden change, because I'll never find the right words. Something just clicked in me when I saw her again. And once that clicked, there was absolutely no going back. She and Maddie are my world. They always will be." Sounds like a small world full of boredom. I took another drink. He laughed good-naturedly. "It is anything but boring, Finn. I promise you that each day is full of new experiences that make me feel happier than I ever knew I could be. I'm going to call crap on that too, Cohen. Don't think I don't remember the smiles we had on our faces the whole time we partied up and down 6th Street. Laughing again, he nodded in agreement. And those were fun times. But they were shallow, empty, compared to the happiness that comes from having a wife to wake up to each and every morning and fall asleep with each night. Yeah, but married people have much less intimacy than single people. I knew that I was right about that. Intimacy was my main hobby, and I wasn't about to cut back on it for some silly marriage with anyone. And waking up to the same face each morning seems dull to me. You only feel that way because you haven't the right woman. When you feel whatever it is that clicks inside your heart and soul, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. Cohen had known the woman for years before he eventually married her. If this something clicks when you meet the woman meant for you, then why didn't that happen when you first met the woman who became your wife? Excellent question. He nodded his head, as if he'd spent a lot of time thinking about that exact question. Apparently, he had. The timing has to be right too. I'd liked Ember back then, but my prior relationship with her older sister had Ember keeping me at arm's length. So our relationship couldn't work back then. Even when we ran into each other again, she was dead set against us picking up where we'd left off. But she eventually had no choice but to start listening to her heart. Thank the good Lord above for that. I didn't grow up in a home with a married couple, so I have no idea how that sort of thing even works. There weren't any kids running around our home. I wouldn't even know what to say to a child, much less know how to deal with one. You grew up very different from how I did. Maybe your parents instilled a yearning in you to be the family man you came to be. Mine did not. You said that your mother got married. She did. I never lived with them, though. I lived with my father, and on occasion, my mother came to see me there. Priscilla Juarez is my mother in the sense that she gave birth to me, but that was about all she has ever done for me. My father hired nannies to take care of me until I no longer needed one. And then there were maids, butlers, cooks, and other staff to do everything else that needed to be done. All I had to do was find some way to entertain myself. Raising my glass, I took another drink. My second favorite hobby, drinking. The life of a man born with a silver spoon in his mouth. I can see how your views on life have been skewed by that. But you should give yourself the opportunity to find out what other things life can give you. I rolled my eyes. It sounds as if you've been speaking with my father. What's he said to you? He picked out some peanuts from the small bowl the bartender slid our way. The other day, I was walking out the nice young woman who'd so generously spent the night with me. Once she'd left, he accosted me. He pulled me into his office and began telling me things he'd never uttered a word of before. Things like how I should find a nice girl who I could settle down with. I grimaced at the thought. He said that he's now a lonely man, but that could have been prevented if he'd married someone he could have grown old with. Yeah. He nodded. Having someone to grow old with is great. You can feel secure and happy that you'll have an old wrinkled hand holding yours when the golden years come knocking at your door. I want nothing to do with old wrinkled hands. The thought nearly turned my stomach. When yours is wrinkled, you won't want to hold a hand with the smooth, elastic skin of a young woman. It would only make your wrinkled skin look much worse in contrast. That is so far in the future that it's not even a thought in my mind yet. You know, there's no one better to listen to than your very own father, Finn. You're just like him, and he would never steer you wrong. He only wants what's best for you. If he says he's lonely, you can take that to the bank. If he warns you that you'll end up a sad, lonely old man, like he is, then you can count on him to be right about that. Listen to him. I honestly think he's fine. He's in his 90s, and only recently began talking this way to me. He's been alone for over a decade, but only now does he think of some old woman who would have been nice to have around for the lamest of reasons. Hand-holding. Sharing some past full of boring days and even more boring nights. That was not going to be a thing I would ever want. Well, maybe you're right, Finn. Who knows? You might well drink yourself into an early grave and never have to grow old at all. Laughing, I picked up my drink and gulped down more of the alcohol. Ah. What a way to go. Well, I'm not going to try to convince you that married life is much better than single life. I know that I wouldn't have believed it either before meeting Ember again. An idea occurred to me. You know, anyone I've ever known who partied hard while single always says that marriage is so much better. But I think you guys just all want company in the hell that you've put yourselves in. You know, bring your old friends down to your level. That way, you have someone to pretend to be having fun with when you have family barbecues and meet at the local zoo to watch the kids run amok while your spouses chatter away about what they'll be bringing to the next potluck dinner you all have. You've just described last weekend. He laughed again. It's not as bad as you're making it sound. There's a lot of camaraderie in being friends with other married couples. You know, they get the struggles you're going through because they've been there. But they also get why you stay in the marriage and try to move past the struggles. Please, explain to me why you would want to overcome a struggle only to find more of them in your future. I could not understand that concept at all. Life is full of struggles, Finn. I scoffed playfully. Mine isn't. I can't recall a single struggle I have ever had to endure. Mind you, I went to prestigious schools and found academia a walk in the park. I witnessed others struggling, and wondered why they would want to continue on with any subject if they couldn't master with ease. Most people have to get through school and earn a diploma at the end if they want to get a job. So they must endure the struggles or end up homeless and penniless. Most people would rather not live that way. And you can thank your father's excellent genetics for your gift of learning. Not everyone is as blessed as you, Finn. I had never seen it from that perspective. I suppose I have been given more than most. He chuckled. Much more than most. Not that it's a bad thing. But not doing more with your life is just a waste. Partying and sleeping around have their time in some people's lives. But then that phase morphs into another, and then more and more after that. That's how you grow and become a well-rounded person, with lots of experiences and knowledge about life in general, that you can pass on to the younger generations who come after you. I'm not worried about the younger generations who come after me. You should think about what your father said. He has you to leave his fortune to. But who will you have if you never open your eyes to find someone to spend your life with? I had never thought about that. Perhaps I'll leave my fortune to someone who has nothing. That would be a nice thing to do. And what about your father's name, your name? Don't you want to keep your DNA going for as many generations as possible? I shrugged. I highly doubt any dead person cares if they leave their DNA behind. I know that I don't care, even a little, if I leave behind offspring just so they can make more offspring, and their offspring will have more of the same. I see no reason that I should suffer the role of husband and parent just so that my father can leave a legacy. What about you, Finn? Don't you want to leave a legacy behind that people will remember you for? No. I drank the last sip from my glass, then waved at the bartender. I'll take a scotch, neat please. Going for the hard stuff? Cohen asked with a knowing grin. Why not? What is life if not to be lived in the fast lane, my friend? I sipped the scotch that was handed to me, scanning the place for my next nightly conquest, when a familiar face caught my eye. Is that Cecile Walsh I see coming through the door?
Cecile.
Hi, I'm here to pick up a takeout order for Cecile Welsh, I told the hostess who met me at the door. Let me check if it's ready yet. She tapped on a tablet, then shook her head. Not yet. If you would like to have a seat at the bar, and maybe get yourself a drink while you wait, I'll bring it to you as soon as it's ready. Great, thanks. I turned and scanned the bar for a free seat when familiar green eyes caught mine. Would you look at that? I was just wondering about him. Finn Murphy waved at me and I waved back, then headed his way. He got up and came to meet me halfway, hugging me tightly. It's been ages, Cecile. You look great. You do too, Finn. Come sit with us. My friend from Austin is here. I'd love to introduce you to. He took my hand, pulling me along with him. Cohen, this is a friend of mine from my college days. Cecile Walsh, meet Cohen Nash. Shaking his hand, I smiled. It's a pleasure to meet you, Cohen. Finn moved over one seat to let me sit between them. Please have a seat, Cecile. Let's catch up. Did you become the school teacher you set out to be? I did. I teach a class of 23rd graders. I always knew you'd do it. He smiled. Do you like working with children? Finn asked. I adore kids. So yeah, I love working with children. And what are you doing with that art history degree you earned? With a shrug he said, not much. Mostly letting my father's friends know when they've been ripped off. So you must have gotten into something else then. No, I never got into anything else. Oh, I said, a bit taken aback. Well, what do you do with your time? I knew he came from money, but I'd had no idea that he didn't need to work. Whatever I want to do with it. He turned to look at the bartender, who'd come over to us. Bring her a Tom Collins, please. You remembered my drink. I smiled, thinking that was something. Of course, I remembered. We went out for drinks every Friday night, and then you would insist that we bowl a few frames. And after bowling, you would ditch the rest of us and go clubbing, I added. Me and Toby Smith were the only ones up for partying back in those days. I couldn't believe I made so many friends at college who were actually there to learn and had no desire to burn up their precious brain cells. That's probably because of your standing as a genius, Finn. Just like time and money, you have an abundance of brain cells that you seem to think you'll never run out of. But I wouldn't be so quick to come to that conclusion, if I were you. He looked around me at his friend. Seems like she thinks along the same lines as you, Cohen. His eyes came back to mine. He just recently said that I might die young, thanks to the amount of alcohol I consume. I just pulled the glass up to my lips and nearly spilled it, as a short burst of laughter flew out of my mouth. Oh my. I looked at Cohen. Did you really say that? Nodding, he said, I'm a rather blunt person at times. We were talking about growing old, and how our mutual friend here is against it. I simply stated that drinking too much could leave him in an early grave, and that he wouldn't have to worry about getting old. A world without the notorious Finn Murphy? I asked, shaking my head. What a drab world that would be. Smiling at Finn, I went on, maybe slow down a bit so that we can keep you around longer. Slow down? He laughed. It's not in my blood to slow down. That's not what your father said, Cohen added. I looked at Finn with a raised eyebrow. He rolled his eyes and grinned at me, making my stomach flutter. Nothing had ever happened between us, but I was a human woman, after all. My father seems to think that one day, I'll be lonely like he is now. But I don't mind being alone. Finn took a drink from the short glass he never let leave his hand. Cohen snorted, then said, Making sure there's pretty much always someone in your bed to keep you company is the opposite of not minding being alone, buddy. Raising my brows, I had to ask, are you still playing as hard as you did back in college? Why would I be playing any less than that? I don't know. It's just that most people slow down once they hit 30. Not you though, huh? Not me. I don't see the need to slow down. Interesting. I couldn't help but think of how different our lives must be. Just recently, I made the decision to stop dating for at least a year. I watched as both men dropped their jaws. It's not that bad, guys. Cohen was the first to speak. What happened? Did someone treat you badly? More than one man has let me down over the years, she admitted. Honestly, it feels like every guy the first meet is just playing games. None of them have shown the slightest interest in building something that will last. Finn raised his glass. To men like me, forever shall we reign free. Yeah, I said, looking at Cohen, see what I mean? I do. He laughed, though he shook his head at our friend. Finn, can't you see that this playboy mentality is wearing thin on women these days? Maybe it is time to put down some roots and stop clipping the flowers from their stems. Finn stared at his friend. What does that even mean, Cohen? You know, you're just taking what you consider is the best part of a woman. Like flowers that wither and die when they're pulled off the stem. Just like your relationships have done. Cohen, I don't call them relationships. I call them hookups. He took another drink, then put the empty glass on the bar, where the bartender quickly refilled it. Hookups are not meant to last. And roots need dirt to grow in, and you know how much I hate dirt. He thinks the same way as every man I've met in LA, I said, then took a drink, wondering if Finn would ever grow up, if any of the men I knew would ever grow up. Peter Pan syndrome is what I'm going to call it. And I'll just have to wait to see if any of them grow up enough to want a real relationship. Until then, I'm not dating, not hooking up, not doing anything even semi-romantic with any man. You sound like you really mean that, Finn said. But you have no idea if you can actually hold out that long. Intimacy is a need, not a want. You are wrong about that, my friend, I let him know. It is not necessary for a person to have intimacy to live, at least not me. I can live very well without it. And I intend to prove that. I think you're going overboard, Cecile. He took another drink. I looked directly at his gorgeous green eyes. I think you are too, Finn. Holding the glass, he asked, are you referring to my drinking? And the women? From the sounds of it, you're indulging too much in both areas. Maybe you should listen to what your father has told you. I remember you telling me that your father was your hero, the one who showed you the way of life and love, or lack thereof. I believe that's how your little rhyme went. It was years ago, so my memory might be a bit rusty. Finn smiled, revealing his pearly white teeth. They were evenly spaced, just as perfect as the rest of him. You remembered. That line was a hard one to forget. Cohen looked back and forth at us. So you two never hooked up? I nearly spit out the drink I'd barely drank. No. Gosh, no. Finn frowned. You don't have to say it like that, Cecile. He looked at Cohen. She caught me making my moves on a few girls before I took notice of her. So she knew what I was up to, and wasn't into being another notch on my well-notched bedpost. I never blamed her for being smart about the type of man I was. Anyway, she made a much better friend than a one-night stand. I laughed. Our friendship was the envy of many young women in those days. While I got to spend time with Finn and really got to know him, the girls he played around with didn't get any part of him. Well, they got at least one part of me all right, Finn joked before cocking his head to one side. I never knew you felt that way about our friendship. Shrugging, I said, I guess we just never talked about that. Surely you knew that most of the girls you spent the night with were jealous of our friendship. I never thought about it that way. I suppose they couldn't understand why I spent time with you, but wouldn't do that with them. He put his glass down on the bar. You and I had fun together. We could laugh. We could talk about anything too. Once I knew you weren't going to fall for my lines, I could be myself with you. It was nice. Very nice. You know, I'm glad I finally ran into you after all this time, I said, giving him a fond smile. It's good to see old friends. It's good to be reminded of those crazy days. You never got crazy, Cecile, he said with a chuckle. The craziest thing you ever did was accidentally throw the bowling ball the wrong way and hit poor Peter Jenkins right in the sweet spot. My cheeks heated with embarrassment. Gosh, I remember doing that. It was so embarrassing. You bought him a whole pitcher of beer as part of my apology. You owed him more than an I'm sorry, Cecile. Plus, he needed something more than the soda he'd been drinking to numb the pain. Sounds like you two spent a lot of time together back then, Cohen said. Finn reached out, brushing my hair back off my face. My little redhead needed some fun in her life, and I was more than happy to be her mentor. Auburn, I told him. My hair is not red, it's auburn. And the fact that we share green eyes, the rarest color in the world, means that we were meant to be friends instead of romantic partners, I suppose. He teased me with the line I always used whenever he got a little too flirty in the early days of our friendship. You know, I've actually heard that the color gray is the rarest eye color. I placed my glass on the bar as I saw the hostess walking my way with a bag in her hand. And it looks like my food is ready. I need to get going. I've got papers to grade. Deciphering third graders' handwriting can be quite an arduous task. Finn looked past me at the lady bringing my order. Don't go. Stay and have dinner with us. I insist. I can't. But we should exchange numbers. I'd love to get together sometime. Cohen cleared his throat. I thought you weren't going to be doing any dating for a year. I laughed. Finn is not a date. I took the bag from the hostess. Thank you. You're welcome. Is there anything else I can get for you? No, thank you. I got up and found Finn standing too. His arms wrapped around me instantly, lifting my feet off the floor. Promise me that you'll call. I handed him my phone once he let me out of his arms. I promise. Here, type in your number. Since you're a teacher, I'd better not disturb you during work hours. How late at night can I call? Nothing past 9, I said as I pressed the contact he'd created and heard his cell ring. 9? That's very early. He swiped the screen, then saved my number into his contacts list. Looking over his shoulder, I saw that he'd written Cecile, friend, no calls after 9. You have to write yourself notes? It never hurts. He shoved the phone back into the pocket of his slacks. So weekends? What about after 9 on those nights? You know, I don't really like getting calls that late. I'm an early bird. Even on the weekends. He shook his head with an exaggerated frown. Sounds to me that you've forgotten how to have fun. Not to worry. I am free and happy to mentor you in the art of fun once more. And since you won't be dating anyone, that leaves you free to have fun with me. The idea of hanging out with Finn again made me feel warm inside. I left a kiss on his cheek. What do you say to brunch on Sunday? I say that I'll surely be asleep during brunch time. With a smile I said, tell you what, you let me know when you want to do something. I would hate to interrupt your busy schedule. I can do that. I am terribly busy, you know, he joked. Don't I know it? Turning to Cohen, I extended my hand and he shook it. Lovely to meet you, Cohen. Lovely to meet you too, Cecile. Take care. You too. Turning back to Finn, I ran my hand over his clean-shaven cheek. I look forward to hearing from you, old friend. You won't have to wait long, old friend. He kissed my cheek and I felt the tingle left behind. There was a connection between us. A real bond of friendship that I was sure would stand the test of time. Finn would never be a lonely old man, as long as I was alive to hang out with him. You should know that your father is wrong about you, Finn. You'll never be a lonely old man like he fears. You have me as a friend, and I would never let you feel that way. His eyes sparkled. You mean that? Of course I mean that. You were always a wonderful friend. Just because you lack the ability to commit to one girlfriend, doesn't make you a bad friend to me. I'll never let you rattle around your mansion alone, feeling sad. You can always come hang out with me even when we're old. I might have to take you up on that. If I live to a ripe old age like my father has. I'm sure you will. Now I've really got to get home and start grading papers. Bye, boys. I felt his gaze on me as I walked away. When I got to the door, I turned and found Finn still looking at me. With a wave, I left him with a smile on his devilishly handsome face. Too bad he's such a bad boy.
End of sneak peek for Fake It For Real, a Friends to Lovers second chance romance. Please like and subscribe to support this channel, it helps more than you know.